In tonight's dramatic episode of Coronation Street, David Platt's much-anticipated hitman attack played out with a shocking twist. The latest chapter in David's emotional journey reveals that his family now knows the full story behind the attack, as they begin to piece together his plan and the turmoil he's been facing. The episode opened with David narrating his day, counting down the hours until the hit he had orchestrated on himself would take place. The reasoning behind his decision was layered, partly fueled by guilt for the financial ruin he had caused his family, and partly as a desperate attempt to free them from the consequences of his actions. David's day began innocuously enough, with a tender moment as he said goodbye to his daughter Lily, unaware that the events of the day would soon take a darker turn. As David prepared for the inevitable, Nick Tilsley joked about how overdramatic David was being, remarking on how he was acting as if he would never see Lily again. This light-hearted exchange set a stark contrast to the heavy decisions David had made behind closed doors. David then spent the morning in the Rovers, organizing a lunch gathering and doing a kind gesture for his grandmother, Audrey Roberts. As he styled Audrey's hair, the conversation took a poignant turn when David asked Audrey about the time she had tried to take her own life. Audrey reflected on the experience with wisdom, expressing that she was grateful she hadn't gone through with it. She spoke about the small, often overlooked joys of life, like seeing her daughter Gail's dreams come true. Their conversation was interrupted by a call from Max, who was in prison and tearfully revealed that Harvey, his former captor, was still plotting to send people after him. The weight of this revelation added further emotional strain on David. After the call, David headed to the Rovers, where he consumed more alcohol, visibly struggling with the mounting pressure. Sarah and Nick arrived and teased him about drinking vodka at lunchtime. But David used the moment to ask them to stop their constant sibling bickering. In a moment of vulnerability, he wrote a letter to his wife, Shona, expressing his hopes that one day she would be able to forgive him. He then drank more vodka, sinking deeper into his despair. In the final hours before the planned hit, David sent a voice message to hitman Andy, instructing him to carry out the hit quick and painless, and shared his location. As the time for the hit drew closer, David drunkenly stumbled into the road. It was at this moment that Andy, behind the wheel of his car, sped towards David, unintentionally hitting both David and a pregnant Daisy Midgley. Shona arrived just in time to witness the crash, rushing to David's side in a panic to try and stop his bleeding. Kit Green quickly called for an ambulance as the situation became dire. Nick, who had been outside the pub, witnessed Andy trying to hobble away from the crash site. Cornering Andy, Nick demanded answers, and Andy revealed chilling information. It's what David wanted. He then played the voice note David had sent, confirming that David had indeed planned his own attack. Andy warned Nick to keep quiet, threatening to make matters worse for him if he spoke out. Back at the hospital, Sarah and Nick began piecing together the full extent of David's plan. Sarah discovered the letter that David had written to Shona, and together with Audrey, they confronted the truth about what had really happened. The three of them met with Shona, who was anxiously awaiting news about David's condition. The doctors informed them that David's injuries were severe, and it was a touch-and-go situation. Shona expressed suspicion about the entire ordeal, believing that Harvey might still be involved in some way, but none of the three could bring themselves to tell her the full truth. In an attempt to protect David, Nick even lied to Shona, claiming that he had not caught up with Andy. As the episode came to a close, Shona was left with more questions than answers. The trio discussed whether they should reveal the truth to her, but Nick and Sarah were adamant that, given all that Shona was already dealing with, it would be too much for her to bear. Sarah read through the letter again as David's voiceover played out, further emphasizing the emotional weight of the situation. As the credits rolled, the audience was left wondering if Shona would ever learn the full story behind the hit on David, and whether the truth would come to light in the coming episodes. With the Platt family in turmoil, it's clear that the consequences of David's actions are far from over, and the road ahead will be filled with difficult decisions and painful revelations. The question remains, will the Platts eventually tell Shona the truth about David's plan, or will they continue to protect her from the harsh reality of what her husband almost did?